Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started in a moment. Thanks for joining us. Happy to have you here. And we'll take just a few seconds to let people in, and then we will get started for today. All right, we will give it a few more seconds. All right, so let's jump right in and people can join in later on and we will get them all caught up in what we're talking about today. So hi everybody, welcome to our final webinar for our Houston Safe Routes to School series. I can't believe that we're here at webinar number 5, but we are here. Today we're talking all about planning for the future. So Safe Routes to School advocacy, and we'll also be highlighting some great work going on in a few other cities and communities across the country. So it should be a good one today. For those of you who might be new to the partnership, we are a national organization working to advance safe walking and rolling to and from schools and everyday life to improve the health and well-being of people of all races, income levels, and abilities, and building healthy, thriving communities for everyone. And for those of you who have been with us for a long time, welcome back. Thanks for joining us again, and it is nice to see you. So I'm Corey with the Safe Routes Partnership. I'm based in Washington, D.C., and I've been leading this webinar series for City of Houston. And those of you who are joining us today, if you want to introduce yourselves in the chat, share a bit about who you are, how you're connected to Safe Routes to School. If you want to share something that you're looking forward to doing this spring or this summer, it's that time of year now. I know here in DC, it'll be like in the 90s over the weekend, which I'm not thrilled about. I'm not ready for like that type of heat and humidity, but those of you who are, in Houston might be used to it. But I'm more into a slow ease into spring. So in the chat box, please feel free to introduce yourselves and let us know where you are, where you're coming from, and if you'd like to share something that you're looking forward to doing this summer, please do so. I hope to spend a lot of time outside, and hopefully the humidity won't get to me too much. Okay. So just a little bit about what we'll be covering today. So today we're talking all about different Safe Routes to School programs that are happening across the country, and then also how you can advocate for Safe Routes to School in your own community. Those of you who are joining us from Houston, we've been talking a lot about, how to start your own Safe Routes to School program, whether that's in an individual school or a small school cohort. So we'll share some strategies for kind of bolstering up those advocacy efforts and hopefully trying to get a Safe Routes to School program up and started in the Houston area. So we'll talk about some different tips, strategies, and ways you can use Safe Routes to School events to advocate for Safe Routes to School programming and funding. And of course, we'll have a Q&A. And if you have questions throughout the session, please feel free to add them into the chat box, the Q&A box. We love to hear from you all. And just get a sense of who is with us today. So please feel free to share that as well. So just to do a little quick recap of our Houston Safe Routes to School webinar series. Like I mentioned, this is our last one for the series. So we started out, I think way back in October, talking about Safe Routes to School 101, just kind of like the basics of the program, followed by some engagement, education, and encouragement programming. We did a session about that, so non-infrastructure. And then earlier this year, we talked about some engineering strategies for Safe Routes to School. And I think last month or the month before, we talked about starting a Safe Routes to School program in an individual school or cohort. So to round out that session, today we're talking all about Safe Routes to School highlights and advocacy, like I just mentioned, which would be a good way to hopefully end on a positive and inspiring note. So to start, I wanted to share a few safe routes to school highlights from other programs across the country. We've been talking a lot about Houston and Harris County, but we haven't really explored what's happening in some other parts of the country. And one of my favorite things about the work that I do is that I get to hear about all this great work that's happening and then share it back with you all. So the programs we're going to be talking about today, are great. And there's so many programs that are great. And so I hope that you all, kind of get a sense of just what's happening in other places and hopefully get some ideas or inspiration for things that you all can do as you develop your programs in Houston. So in our last webinar, we talked a bit about where different Safe Routes to School programs can live. And we mainly focused on programs that might be housed out of a school district or an individual school. So not every Safe Routes to School program has to be a huge citywide or countywide effort. What I'm actually going to be sharing for this Safe Routes to School highlights are actually programs that are based in either a larger transportation agency, a health department, or a nonprofit or community partner. So just to give you all a sense of what different programs can look like. So these will be definitely a bit larger in scale, and a bit more, like resources behind it than say a small school-based program. It's not to say that one is better than the other. There are lots of different Safe Routes to School program models. So it's just finding the one that works best for you. We wanted to give you all a sense of what the other side of the coin looks like and show you, what some city and county programs look like. You can also consider what that could possibly look like in your community. So we have three different program models I'm going to share about today. The first is based out of the transportation department, Safe Routes to School, Montgomery County, which is very close to me in Maryland. Part of the county is right outside of DC, so I'll share a bit about their program. We'll also talk about a program that's based in a health department, the public health department, and that's Safe Routes to School Mecklenburg, which includes the city of Charlotte. And then lastly, Safe Routes to School Tucson, which is based out of a local organization, Living Streets Alliance. So those are the three different program models we'll be talking about today. So first up is Montgomery County, which is a county of a little over 1 million, and they work a lot with their local school district, public school district. There are about 209 schools in Montgomery County, and like I mentioned, their program is based out of the Montgomery County Department of Transportation. So it's a transportation department program. And so Montgomery County has a full-time Safe Routes to School coordinator and also 2 Safe Routes to School engineers. So they kind of make up their Safe Routes to School team. So the coordinator mainly focuses on education and encouragement programming. So, doing outreach events and assemblies and organizing walk to school day events, bike rodeos, kind of like that non-infrastructure programming. And the engineers really focus on, like those school safety improvement projects, so getting the infrastructure that's needed to make the area around school campuses, safer for students who are walking and biking and rolling. So it's kind of a 2-pronged approach that they have in Montgomery County. So like I mentioned, it's a pretty big county, lots of schools. They really try to focus on 10 to 15 priority schools where they do a bit more like deeper programming. And those are actually determined by doing some walk audits and road safety assessments, really trying to figure out where that need is. But they also do provide services for, all the county schools. So, supporting different events, providing resources, materials. They have a really robust and interactive website. So that's kind of how they work more holistically, and then try to focus on deeper programming on a smaller cohort of schools. Montgomery County is also a Vision Zero county, so they do have a Vision Zero initiative, and the coordinator actually sits on a pedestrian, bicycle, and traffic safety advisory committee. So this program is really linked to the county's Vision Zero program and goals. So those of you who are Houston-based, Harris County-based, I know there's a Houston Vision Zero program or initiative. So this is one example of a program that is really linked to Vision Zero. Just a few of the program features in Montgomery County. One of my favorites is they have a mascot called Zeal the Zebra, which you'll see in a moment in a video that I'm going to show. But that is their Safe Routes to School mascot. when I've gone to events in Montgomery County and Zeal is there, you would think that there was like a superstar that showed up. The kids are so excited. And Zeal really is that symbol of safety for the students. So they see Zeal and they, start thinking about those, bike skills reminders or how to cross the street safely. So, it's just kind of like a cool, fun way to get kids excited about safe routes to school. They also do a lot of safety assemblies, bike rodeos, art contests. I actually just helped judge one of their student pedestrian safety art contests where kids created posters about, staying safe, walking and biking and rolling. And that was a lot of fun. And kids can earn the gift cards, and schools can earn gift cards for participating. So that's a lot of fun. Safety campaigns. I also judged a high school PSA contest where high school students created safety videos about safe walking, biking, and driving, I believe. So those get a lot of participation, a lot of enthusiasm around the contest, and they offer some really great prizes too. So that's another key feature here. Then also just they do a lot of different community, fairs, festivals, a lot of social media, newsletter engagement. There's a virtual safety week that started during the pandemic. It was originally supposed to be like a big in-person safety event, but they were able to pivot and do a virtual safety week instead, which they offer lots of different activities and programs for kids to get involved in virtually. And then of course, bike and walk and roll to school day, which is always a big marquee event in Montgomery County. And I will show you a quick video of their most recent walk to school day, which is in October. And you can see Zeal in the video as well. The other cool thing about their walk to school day events and bike to school day events is that it really involves not just the Safe Routes to School team, but other local agency staff and elected officials. So council members and people from the transportation department, the planning department, other departments really come out to support this event. So that's another cool feature. So I'm going to go ahead and hopefully this video will work for you all. And this is Walk to School Day last October.
Amidst a sea of umbrellas, county officials and student staff and families from Summit Hall Elementary School gathered to celebrate the 24th Annual International Walk to School Day.
It is International Walk to School Day on this beautiful rainy morning. We are so excited. We've been talking about safety to and from school all week long, getting kids hyped up and excited about walking to school.
Today is awesome. You see the energy out here. School is about getting to school safely, learning while you're here, and that's what everyone's out here to do, from our transportation, police, and fire to the school community. We've got Zeke the Zebra from the Department of Transportation, whose job is to make sure to emphasize all the things. Look at the stop sign, cross at the crosswalk, wear something that's reflective if you're at night. All the things that we want our kids to learn and have a second nature, so that as they're getting to and from school, they can be safe.
Hi, happy Walk to School Day. Say hi.
Today is a great day because I got a free gift bag and there's a fire truck right there.
So we're giving all the kids bags of material that have guidance on how to walk safely to school, reflective items so that they can be seen when it's dark or raining, an activity kit, whistles, and all kinds of fun stuff. And it's also to encourage people to try walking to school rather than getting dropped off by mom or dad or taking the bus as a fun way and start your day off with a little activity.
Walk to school! Walk to school! Walk to school!
So that's just one glimpse of Safe Routes to School event in Montgomery County. I think that actually one cool thing about that video is that the school district actually put that together. So I think it was somebody from their digital media team or comms team came out to put that piece together. So those of you who might be doing Safe Routes to School, events, whether it's a walk and roll to school day, bike and roll to school day, or something else that's happening, it's a good idea to see if there's somebody at the school district or even somebody in the school maybe who can, come out and shoot some photos and videos and kind of like create a little digital media piece for you to both share back to your community and then also share with other decision makers who you might be in touch with as you're trying to grow your program. Just one one tidbit or one idea from Montgomery County. So next up, we have Safe Routes to School Mecklenburg County, which, like I said, includes Charlotte, North Carolina. Also a population of about 1 million. Their school district is the Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools, or CMS, about 180 schools. And yeah, they also have a Safe Routes to School coordinator that is based out of the public health department. So I mentioned that Montgomery County is based in the transportation department. Safe Routes to School Mecklenburg County is a part of Mecklenburg County Public Health. So they have a full-time Safe Routes to School coordinator and serve a little over 100 elementary and middle schools. So schools can request programming and support. One really cool thing about this program is that there's a school zone safety committee, which includes the Safe Routes to School coordinator, the school district, and then Charlotte DOT. And so that group kind of works together to talk about all kinds of school improvement projects. So the Safe Routes to School coordinator might go out and do an observation during pickup or drop off or a walk audit or another program, and might see some sort of infrastructure issue or challenge or safety concern that that parents or students bring up. So he can go back to that school safety zone committee and say, look, here's what I noticed. I'd like to make some recommendations for these changes, and the committee kind of works together to help implement some of those safety changes. So the way that that those three entities work together is really cool and inspiring, and they're really able to get a lot done, in that committee. This program is also aligned with Charlotte's Vision Zero initiative. So again, another program that connects Safe Routes to School and Vision Zero. And actually, in this picture here, it's the Safe Routes to School coordinator. I think there's a school principal and I think the school PE teacher. So this school does a lot of work with their All Kids Bike program, and does a lot of work with PE teachers, actually. PE teachers and school admin are kind of like some of the biggest champions here. So this was, I think, a bike build program or bike build project that they were working on. So just a little shout out for All Kids Bike and the great PE teachers in Charlotte Mecklenburg schools. So some of their key features in this program. So here, schools can enter at different partnership levels. So bronze, silver, gold, or platinum. And that's really based off of the level of engagement. So there are some schools that are, that high level of engagement, super involved. There might be some schools that are kind of just like starting out with Safe Routes to School, and are kind of like building up to that more robust engagement. So there's basically something for everyone, which is awesome. Like I also mentioned, there's a school zone committee, and they're able to put together a school zone infrastructure policy. So again, this was created in collaboration with the Safe Routes School Coordinator, CDOT, the DOT, and then CMS, the school district. And that's really helped shape a lot of the school improvement projects that can happen. The program, the Safe Routes School Coordinator also does, like I mentioned, the drop off and pickup assessments, the All Kids Bike program, which is in 30 schools. And again, there's that really strong engagement with the PE teachers. And then also some walking school bus and bike train programs and traffic garden projects. And so actually this picture is from the most recent Bike to School Day, I believe. It was like a, the swag bag giveaway. And this photo is actually with a group of students who belong to a Bicycle Friday group. So basically every Friday, this group of students, meet at a local park and then ride to school on their bikes, either along like a bike lane or a sharrow or a greenway. And this group is actually led by teaching assistants, teacher assistants, and parents. And about 20 to 50 riders participate each week, which is awesome participation numbers. And actually, I think this group too is working on a traffic garden project to help facilitate some of that, bicycle education programming. So yeah, that's a bit about Charlotte. So I'd say the key here, or key feature here, is definitely that school safety zone committee and that collaboration, and a really robust bike education program as well. And they also, just a few other things from Charlotte, here is a resource guide they put together for their partner schools, along with a school travel map. So, a good idea, those of you who might even be working in an individual school, just put together a, school safety travel map, a recommended route map for students and families so that they know what the safest areas are or the safest routes to travel to school. And again, this can be done on a school level, a small school cohort level. It all depends on what makes sense in your context, but these maps can be super helpful both for students and families and can be shared, in the front office or back to school night or during outreach events. So just another idea as you all are kind of thinking about ways to develop your programs. And last but certainly not least, there's Safe Routes to School Tucson, which is a population of a little over 500,000. This program works with Tucson Unified School District and Sunnyside School District, serving about 180 schools. And this program is actually housed in a local nonprofit, Living Streets Alliance. So this is an organization that the city of Tucson contracts out Safe Routes to School to them. And they're the ones who, help implement this program. So there's a full-time Safe Routes to School coordinator here. And they offer broad Safe Routes to School programming to both school districts, but also I think work on like deeper programming with 4 focus schools. So sorry, I think there are a few elementary schools and 1 K-6 school. I should probably say 3 elementary schools and 1 K-6 school. All the schools are Title I, predominantly Latinx populations, and these are schools that kind of get that deeper level of programming. So one really cool thing about this program is their bike clubs. There are kids who are super into bike clubs, learning how to ride, learning how to, repair bikes, and really kind of embracing that bicycle culture. There's also bike leader training, so to help the trainers, kind of work with students during the bike clubs. They also offer mobile bike repair clinics. There's a weekly walking school bus at a school. I think that there's like one school that has 100 people who participate, which is amazing. And this program also does a lot of safety education assemblies. So Tucson and Living Streets Alliance, they partner with an organization called Environmental Education Exchange. And so they actually work with them to develop and lead education sessions and curriculum around bicycle and pedestrian safety. And they're able to do about 150 presentations per year, which is amazing. I think they're on track to meet their goal for this year. So that education piece is also a key feature of Safe Routes to School Tucson. And they also, do their, traditional walk and roll to school day, bike and roll to school day, and also some safe route mapping. And they definitely also have a goal of, trying to both celebrate and enjoy those one-off events, like a walk to school day, but also do some deeper programming as well. So thinking about, ways to do, sustained programming and engagement, whether that's through their bike clubs or their mobile repair clinics or just other community engagement efforts. And a few photo highlights from this program. So this is from their Earn a Bike program. So students, can go and learn how to repair a bike, fix a bike, and they can, earn a bike by participating in the programs. Here are kids who are, hard at work, learning how to fix bikes and repairing things. And then here are a few photos from their bike clubs. So, like I mentioned, these are kids who, gather and learn about different, bike skills, how to ride safely, how to repair your bike. And it just looks like a lot of fun. And I think I have another photo here of the students who are participating in bike clubs. Another really cool thing about Safe Routes to School Tucson is just their level of community engagement and, really taking the time to, connect with students and families and figure out what people want and need, nurturing their school champions. I think in one school, like the biggest school champion is the librarian at the school. So there really is this, community feel to this program, which I think is really awesome. So that is a bit about Safe Routes to School in Tucson. And then again, just to bring this back to what's happening in the Houston area. So right now there is no, comprehensive Houston Safe Routes to School program. But there are a few other cool things that are happening, like the Acres Homes Safe Routes to School pilot that's going on, Safe Routes to School Baytown. I mentioned Houston Vision Zero before. And I definitely think there are opportunities for parents, caregivers, school champions, and advocates to grow a Safe Routes to School program, probably more on like the school or district level. Like I just mentioned, the programs that we just talked about, those are headed by a local organization, health department, or DOT. For Houston, we're talking more about what you can do on a school or school district level. But I will say that everything that I just mentioned with those other programs can be done on a school or small school cohort level, probably just at a smaller scale. But you can make it work depending on your situation and the context that you're in. So keep that in mind as you start thinking about developing a program in your area. So I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions before we keep it moving. And like I mentioned, please feel free to put questions in the chat box. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any other questions, ideas, suggestions, please feel free to share in the chat. All right, so we just talked about some different Safe Routes to School programs that are happening. Hopefully they've given you some ideas and you feel inspired. And those of you who are in Houston and kind of ready to take that next step and start forming a program in your school, in your community, a lot of that depends on being able to make the case for Safe Routes to School and tell people who are some of the decision makers why Safe Routes to School is important, and kind of put your advocacy hat on and really start trying to get that buy-in and convince people to support and invest in Safe Routes to School. For some people, this might be something that they've never heard of before, haven't thought of before. So this can be an opportunity for you to both raise awareness and also show gain support for Safe Routes to School. So I think most of you who've been on these webinars have seen this graphic before, and we know that there are lots of benefits for Safe Routes to School, whether it's community connectedness or increasing academic performance, improving traffic safety, cost savings, not having to spend money, on gas and car use, safety from crime, climate benefits, cleaner air, less pollution, fewer students with asthma, and even just having healthier students all around, whether that's physically healthy or even just trying to limit the impacts of social isolation, which was a really big deal, especially over the past 2 years, as students were learning from home. So there are lots of benefits to Safe Routes to School. So thinking about how Safe Routes to School programs are organized, like I just mentioned, at the local level, most programs are organized by cities, counties, schools, school districts, or community organizations. And these might serve one school or many schools throughout the community. At the state level, so thinking about, statewide in Texas, the program is usually administered by a state department of transportation. So there are some states that have these state Safe Routes to School programs, and they help provide support to local programs. So like Virginia, for example, is a state that does this. They have their state Safe Routes to School program, and then that program provides support for the local coordinators who are working in different cities and counties. So when you're thinking about trying to get support for your Safe Routes to School program in Houston or the Houston area, you might be thinking about trying to gain support for a few different things. It could be something like a street or sidewalk improvement, a crosswalk improvement, bike education, improvements to other places along school routes. It could be just trying to get support for Safe Routes to School funding. Maybe you want to do a walk to school day and you just want, to get some funding for that event, or a bike rodeo program or a bike education program. You can also think about Safe Routes to School policy. So on the school, city, or state level, and we talked about that a bit in our last webinar as well, just ways to kind of gain support for, really institutionalizing Safe Routes to School. Even things like drop off and pickup procedures. There are some schools where they want to get support so that, they can do a remote drop off or pickup so that there aren't, there isn't a huge line of cars in the car loop. So that might be something you're trying to advocate for. Even something like more crossing guards. I've worked with schools here in DC where, parents have said, there's no crossing guard at this intersection, we need one. And so they go to the DOT or an elected official and, work to get crossing guards. So all of these things can be a part of a Safe Routes to School program or initiative. Like I always say, Safe Routes to School doesn't have to look the same in every community. So it's really what you all and what your community needs and wants to focus on. So when you're thinking about trying to gain that support, it's really good to know, who are the decision makers, who are the other Safe Routes to School sport supporters in the area, who are your teammates, who are your allies who can help you get this done, and then what changes are possible. I think that we always have like our lofty goals of, in an ideal world, here's what I would want. But it's nice to know it's great to have that vision, but also what's possible right now and what are some goals we can work towards maybe sometime in the future. So thinking about, who's kind of responsible for what, if your main goal is street or sidewalk improvements, you might want to be talking to, the city or county transportation department, maybe public works, possibly city council or county board. And then any sort of like larger statewide improvements would probably involve talking to the state DOT, but I don't think this will really impact anybody on this call today. So that's more on like the infrastructure side. If you're looking to, make some more changes or just get some education and encouragement programming going. So let's say that you want to get support for a walk to school day event or a bike education program or some school safety assemblies. In that case, you're going to talk to like the school administration, the principal, assistant principal. I mentioned the PE teachers like in Mecklenburg County, they've been great. Can you find a school teacher champion to kind of get on board, or even with the school district leadership. So, superintendent, school board, they can probably help with some of that non-infrastructure programming. And then funding and staffing for Safe Routes to School. If there are any communities that might want to, support a Safe Routes to School, coordinator position. Again, that'll probably go through a city council member, county board, school board, a metropolitan planning organization or an MPO, your regional transportation planning organization, or again, a state DOT if you're working more on the state level. And then lastly, thinking about, Safe Routes to School policy. So really making Safe Routes to School something that is, institutionalized, either wrapped up in some sort of larger plan, like a complete streets plan, for example. If there's like a, comprehensive plan, the Vision Zero plan, there may be public health plans. You can also rope Safe Routes to School into one of those existing plans, or just create your own Safe Routes to School, plan or policy. In that case, you probably want to talk to, school board or your, city or county council members and elected officials if you're working on the school policy level. So once you kind of figure out what you want to do and who you want to talk to, it's really important to connect with decision makers and figure out what their interests and their priorities are. So a lot of this is just trying to, get people on board and convince people to, support the cause that you're working towards. So I just showed you the Safe Routes to School benefits, and these benefits are actually really common motivators for supporting Safe Routes to School. So some people are really, motivated by, climate justice and combating climate change and making sure that we have, clean air to breathe and safe, clean spaces to walk and roll and gather. So that could be the motivation for one person. Another person might care more about the traffic safety lens and making sure that there aren't any serious injuries or fatalities along school routes. Somebody else, especially people who are working inside schools, so teachers, school administrators, school staff. Academic performance could be a big motivator, especially after the past few years where kids haven't been in school buildings. There's been a lot of learning loss. So there's a lot of concerns about, trying to ramp up that academic performance, making sure that students are kind of learning and making up for some of what was lost during remote learning. So it depends on who you're talking to, and you have to kind of figure out, okay, who's this person and what do they want? What do they care about? And how can I use that to help them to get them to help support, Safe Routes to School in my community. So for a school district, you know, a motivator might be, like I mentioned, that academic achievement. Attendance is a big one. You know, we've seen that there are schools where, you know, like there is a biking group on Friday, or if there is a walking school bus program, that can help increase attendance because kids want to, you know, get out there and walk and roll with their friends to school, you know, and get there on time and be ready to learn. Safe and healthy kids can be another motivator on the school district level. Reducing congestion around schools. I'm trying to get like some of that, like I mentioned, the car loop traffic, you know, off the street, and also reducing transportation costs. So not having to pay for, you know, a lot of buses, and being able to make it easier for students to walk and roll to school can be a big motivator for those who are working on school districts. So a school district, you know, a board member, superintendent, somebody else working at that level. For those of you who are connecting with city and county, working on city and county level, you know, things like safety, economics, creating a more livable, walkable community, the environment, and overall community health could be a big motivator for getting people to support safe routes to school. So being able to say, you know, safe routes to school leads to cleaner air, safe routes to school, you know, will help increase our, you know, social emotional wellness. It's good for the environment, it's good for safety. Those can be good motivators for people who might be making decisions at the county or the city level. And if you happen to be working on the state level, you know, all of these motivators work. So the economy, safety, health, transportation, environment, education, everything can be a compelling case for those state level policymakers. So once you figure out who your decision makers are and what motivates them, next it's important to kind of get your team and get your crew together. So who are your Safe Routes to School supporters? You know, I mean, if you want to advocate as a team of one, party of one, that's, you know, that is fine. There are people who do that, but I think that people also like to see that that community support, and being able to work as a team can make it easier for everybody involved. So thinking about some possible, you know, Safe Routes to School supporters, again, in Houston, in your area, there's a Houston Vision Zero Task Force, Houston Bicycle Advisory Committee. Some of your elected officials could be, you know, could be Safe Routes to School supporters, whether it's a city, you know, city council member, county council member. There might be people who are on this call today who, you know, could be your allies and supporters. So if anybody wants to, you know, put in the chat the group that they're connected with, you know, in the Houston area, and you all can connect that way. That can be one way to kind of help build your team of support. At a school or a school district level, you might be thinking more about, you know, parent champions, caregivers, PTA groups are great supporters of Safe Routes to School. Other elected officials, like I mentioned, school board members, you know, could be powerful supporters. You know, neighbors, people who just live in the area around schools. Maybe they don't have kids at the school, but they know that, you know, there are no sidewalks, or that there's a lot of speeding in the neighborhood, and that it impacts, you know, both students, but also just neighbors who live there. I've seen a lot of neighbors who, you know, are really supportive of Safe Routes to School programs, who might not even have a student at the school. School staff, like I mentioned Mecklenburg County a few times, their PE teachers, great supporters, and also, you know, students as well. So, you know, how can students show support for Safe Routes to School? You know, we saw those students who were engaged in, you know, the bike clubs or the art contests in Montgomery County. So, you know, there are kids who are learning about bicycle and pedestrian safety, and who, you know, like want to feel safe themselves and also have their, you know, friends and family be safe as they're traveling to and from school. Crossing guards are also great. You might not necessarily think about, they might not be the first people you think about when thinking about putting together your team, but these are people who see everything on the street. You know, they see, you know, both the great things that are happening and also the dangerous things that are happening. So consider bringing a crossing guard, you know, into your team if you're going to try to get a larger group to support a Safe Routes to School program. They can be great partners. So thinking about how you can really work as a team to get some support and some momentum behind Safe Routes to School, you can try leading an event together. So maybe a few people team up and decide to do a walk to school day event and kind of use that as a way to build some momentum around Safe Routes to School. If you could apply for any small grants, maybe a mini grant to try something out, or do a public testimony in front of the city council, town council, county council, and talk about school travel and why it's important. Maybe some things that you've noticed that are areas of concern, and really raise that awareness on a larger level. You can also talk about Safe Routes to School just with your individual networks. So, friends, family members, colleagues, people who, might just want to join in because they're, a part of your personal network. I also mentioned in our last webinar, I think, about creating a Safe Routes to School, committee or community task force where you, kind of like create something that's a bit more formal, and try to work on Safe Routes to School that way. Like I mentioned, that committee in Mecklenburg County has been really successful in kind of working together as a team. You can also approach local decision makers about Safe Routes to School funding. If there's district money that's available from the school district, from an individual school, city council, town council, you can kind of connect with your local areas and figure out when budget season is. That can also be another way to kind of like work with your team to approach an entity and say, hey, we want to start this program, we want to try out this event, what kind of funding is available for us? And then last but not least, when you do this, it's also really important to have a strong and clear message. So what can your message be to show people that, yes, Safe Routes to School is really important and we need it. So just in thinking about, the time that we're living in now and keeping Safe Routes to School, relevant and connected to the needs of our communities, you can just say that Safe Routes to School is it's an essential need for students and families. We talked about essential needs a lot over the past few years, and transportation and transportation safety is definitely one of them. So if you're trying to gather some talking points when you're, out talking to council members or friends or colleagues or even an individual school principal, you can just say that, COVID-19 has really taken a toll on our communities and kids, both from a physical health standpoint, of just not being able to be as physically active, an academic standpoint, that learning loss that I talked about, disparate impacts by race and socioeconomic status. So knowing that, students of color, students in lower income communities have definitely been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, spikes in traffic danger, and also that social isolation piece, just people not being able to gather, and some of the impacts that's had on everybody's mental health and wellness. Those can all be reasons for supporting a Safe Routes initiative at a school or school district. So I just mentioned those are some of the issues or concerns that we've been facing, but Safe Routes to School can be one way to to help solve some of those issues. So like I mentioned before, that benefits graphic, just bringing that back and tying it into some of our experiences from the past few years. So being able to walk and roll to school can really help with that, improving physical health or social and emotional health, lowering transportation costs and reducing absences, reducing some of that traffic congestion and that poor air quality, improving academic performance, and just really improving, safety from both a personal standpoint and also traffic safety, traffic violence standpoint. So those are a few talking points you all can use, like I mentioned, and when you're, talking to potential Safe Routes to School supporters in your communities. So if you're trying to figure out where to find information in general about, advocating for Safe Routes to School, I mentioned there's the Safe Routes to School benefits graphic, which I showed earlier and is linked in this presentation. Also sharing some Safe Routes to School success stories. So like I mentioned, at the top of the presentation, I shared 3 different program models that have been really successful. So being able to go to your community and say, hey, look what's happening in Tucson, or look what's happening in Charlotte, or look what's happening, in Maryland. It worked in those communities. We want to create our own, our own program here in, here in Houston or Harris County, and we want to have our own, celebrate our own successes, that could also be a compelling argument for people. So those success stories and those, and those national highlights, and also any sort of, citations, research around safe routes to school. We have plenty of that to share too. So if there's any sort of, research lens that you're looking into, feel free to reach out to me and I can share some other resources around the benefits of safe routes to school. You can also find information at your local school district. So, trying to find information about academic achievement, your attendance rates, and try to link that to, the need for safe routes to school. So knowing that attendance is going down or knowing that there's learning loss, being able to point to a data point and say, hey, this is the data right now. Here's how safe routes to school can help. Same thing with your local and state health department, getting those, getting data around children's health, chronic disease, physical activity or inactivity rates, air quality data, and then using some of that data to approach a school district, to approach a board member, to approach a council member and say, hey, here's the lay of the land right now. Safe routes to school can really help, improve some of these health outcomes or these environmental outcomes. That can be another way to, pull some data to help you make a stronger case for safe routes to school. And there are also other places like, medical centers, hospitals, places that kind of see what those traffic injuries and fatalities look like, on a real visceral level. Community health data, like I just mentioned, if you're talking with your local DOT, the local road conditions, crash data, information that you might have collected during a walk audit, you can go and say, look, like I went out and did a walk audit with 20 community members and we saw that there are no sidewalks or that we need, bike lanes or ADA ramps or whatever it is. Being able to share that can really help you make your case for safe routes to school. Any transportation data, so crash data around serious injuries will also help, on both a local level, city, state level, and regional level. And of course, too, there are the stories of your students and families and community members, which can be super powerful. So I mentioned doing the walk audits, if there are photos, videos, public testimonies, or just other anecdotes that either a community member can share themselves, or if they give you permission to share their story, that can also help. But I think that, trying to humanize safe routes to school and, really kind of share those personal stories, make it something that everybody can relate to, can be really helpful in getting people on board with your message. And lastly, there's just the delivery. So, how do you, make your case and spread the word about safe routes to school? So, using things like print media, social media, events, word of mouth. I know here in DC, there are a lot of different, parent Facebook groups and other groups where people post things about, safe school travel or concerns. And those do end up getting the attention of, both community members and also like our DOT and elected officials. They see something posted on Twitter or Facebook and they're like, I didn't realize that this was, an issue. And so they actually see it and then go out to the community and try and, work together to come up with a solution. So that type of delivery can be really helpful, both in building awareness and also getting some quick action. And also just again, directly appealing to decision makers. So invite agency staff, invite elected officials to events like you saw in the Montgomery County video. Like there's a council member there, the director of the DOT was there. So inviting people out and saying like, let's do a walk audit together, or let's do a walk to school day, together, so you can come and see, what's happening on the ground. Also testifying at public hearings or committee meetings, attending a town council meeting, that can be one angle too if you're somebody who's comfortable doing public testimony, writing letters or emailing, committees, elected officials, your local agency staff, even just like meeting or calling. Some people like to, I guess, do it old school these days, pick up the phone and call, or schedule a meeting and see if you can kind of connect with decision makers that way through those direct appeal methods. And then just a few other additional Safe Routes to School advocacy efforts. There's new infrastructure funding, which will hopefully lead to some more opportunities to support Safe Routes to School, especially infrastructure projects. So that's an exciting thing to look forward to, hopefully, and can help build some momentum around Safe Routes to School. And then just again, in the Houston area, being able to connect Safe Routes to School to local health and wellness initiatives. So Be Well Acres Homes Initiative, which is Safe Routes to School is part of a larger initiative that's focused on the health and wellness of this one particular community. So if there are other community-wide initiatives that you all are working on or involved with, is there a way to tie Safe Routes to School into some of those efforts? It's also going to be a solution to the school bus shortage and traffic congestion, which we've talked about before. So if there are people who are trying to search for solutions for that, you can offer up Safe Routes to School as one of them. You can also connect Safe Routes to School to Safe Routes to Parks initiatives. So that's what they're doing in Baytown. There's Baytown Safe Routes to School and then Baytown Safe Routes to Parks. So are there ways you can link those two together? I know that in Mecklenburg County, they're thinking about doing that, thinking about how to, kind of combine that park access with school access, especially since some of the routes are overlapping. And then also any sort of like local equity or social justice initiatives that might be, around supporting, safe routes for walking and rolling in communities of color, in lower income communities, if there are environmental justice concerns, things like that. Safe Routes to School can also be a part of those efforts as well. So I will pause again to see if there are any questions. Somebody just asked about school bus shortages in production and new bus supply chain issues. So school bus shortages, it's actually a school bus driver shortage. So back when schools were reopening, there was a lot of talk about not being able to find enough school bus drivers, which led to some students some drivers having to do their same route a few times or take on other routes, and having kids having to wait at the bus stop for a longer time, or having to adjust the time that they get to the bus stop. So I know that at least here in DC and in a bunch of other communities that we've worked with here around DC, we don't have yellow school buses, but in communities around DC and some other communities, that was a real issue at the start of this school year, especially just not having enough school bus drivers and having more kids being driven to school or having to wait on the school bus stop for a long time. So, if that's an issue in your community, being able to say like, hey, we don't have enough school bus drivers. Is there a way to make it easier for kids to be able to, walk and roll to school as opposed to, taking the bus? And that doesn't work in all cases. There are some neighborhoods where, a student can't walk to school because it's, too far away, or there's a highway, or, it's just not safe. So it really depends on the context of your school community. Any other questions? Okay. All right, and so lastly, I just wanted to share a few different ideas for gaining support through Safe Routes to School through doing some events. So like I mentioned, Walk and Roll to School Day in October is a great, event to kind of gain some momentum. And again, you can do this if you have an established Safe Routes to School program or not. You can just say, we're doing Walk to School Day. It doesn't have to be that day in October. It can be any day. I think Montgomery County, they've done walk to school days and bike to school days, just like, throughout a month. So it doesn't have to be just one day, whenever makes sense for you. But that's a great way to kind of, energize people and encourage walking and biking and build that momentum. Like I mentioned, Bike and Roll to School Day, that just happened a few weeks ago, but you can also do it whenever you want to, whenever it makes sense for you. I'm doing a traffic safety demonstration. So this is one that I helped work on here in DC. It was organized by a neighborhood council member, a neighborhood advisory committee member. She noticed there was a school in her, in her community that did not have a safe crosswalk for students. And so we worked with a local arts organization to create some, safety banners, and went out with Student Safety Patrol and had a safety demonstration, which did result in helping to fix a signal that was broken. And I don't know if they ended up getting a full crosswalk, but it did get the attention of the DOT and other elected officials and other, partners here in the city. And now there are those changes that are being put in place to help make the crosswalk safer for students. So again, this is a school. The school does not have an official Safe Routes to School program. This was done completely by community members, parents, caregivers, and it actually worked. So whether you call it a Safe Routes to School program an official program or not, you can still do Safe Routes to School activities. It's all the same thing and all about keeping kids safe. A walk audit. We talked about walk audits a bunch, but that can be a great way to, help gain support and build awareness. Like I said, invite an elected official out, invite some DOT members out, public health department, other neighbors, community members, parents, caregivers, students. That can just be another way to kind of raise awareness and, show that there is that support for Safe Routes to School on a community level. And then, any other sort of related events, other community events might be happening, if they're, health fairs, back to school night, conference night, other things that are happening in the school or, school vicinity, are there ways to tie Safe Routes to School to some of those events as well? And then also social media, contests or posts or campaigns. That's something, again, you can start just at a school if you want to. It doesn't have to be tied to an official Safe Routes to School program. But if you want to do some sort of, safety contest, photo contest, or just, posting, different photos or activities on social media, that can also be another way to kind of spread the word about Safe Routes to School and get some support going on. And lastly, I won't go totally into school streets because it's in the interest of time, I will breeze through this, but I will keep the information here in the presentation to share with you all. But school streets is another great way to build, build momentum around Safe Routes to School. So school streets is basically opening up the street so that students can walk and bike and roll, mainly during like school drop-off times in the afternoon. So a school might block off the street right in front of the school building, close it to vehicles and pass through traffic, and just have it be open for students who are walking and biking. Sometimes they do different activities or games. They can decorate it with sidewalk chalk, but it can also just be, closing that street and keeping it open for kids who are walking and biking for a very short period of time. So in the presentation, there's a video that's linked that talks a bit about the school streets programs that are happening in Canada. I highly suggest checking that out because that's something that could be done, on a school level. It probably does need the support of, a city or council member, possibly if you have to, if it involves, closing down a street for a period of time. But that's another great way to gain support and momentum. And school streets just a great way to address congestion, reduce air pollution, limit the danger of cars on the road during school dismissal, especially. I know you've all seen like the school dismissals where, there are kids all over and there are cars all over and there are a bunch of near misses, and school streets help to, kind of alleviate reduce some of those dangers during what can be a really chaotic time of the school day. And it also, they also just provide a place for students to be, play and be active. And if you want any other, more information about school streets, a really cool report just came out last month where the Child Health Initiative looked at over 1,000 school streets in different countries, and kind of talked about how school streets can really address both climate change, air quality, and also traffic safety. And they provide a lot of guidance, advice, and toolkits for how to implement school streets. So that's a great report. And just some examples here in the US, LA, Portland, and Seattle have tried out school streets. It's definitely still a growing movement here in the US, but can be something that could be an option for those of you who are working in an individual school or small school cohort, and also great for like smaller cities or towns as well. So I wanted to keep that possibility, put that possibility in your mind as well. Like I mentioned, I'll send out all of these links afterwards so that you can explore a bit more about school streets. And there's information about who should be involved and kind of like how to make the case for school streets and how to connect it to safe routes to school. And then just try it out. It's just closing down a street in front of a school so that kids can walk and bike without a lot of cars around. So I'm going to just check the chat box really quickly. Are there programs to show younger and older kids how to cycle safely? In the UK, where I grew up, we had a cycling proficiency certificate that was part of a school program. Jessica, yes. So there are lots of safe routes to school programs that work on bike safety. Some are run out of a local organization, a local bike organization, bike coalition. Here in DC, we actually have a bike education program as part of our school curriculum. So all second graders learn how to bike and bike safely on the road. The traffic gardens are kind of becoming more of a thing here, so that's another way to focus on safe walking and biking. But if you want more like specific information about a certain program or other safe routes to school programs here, in the US that are working on bike education specifically, I can definitely email you. Like I mentioned, the group in Houston, the group in Tucson, they do a lot of bike education work in their program, and Mecklenburg County does as well. I think Montgomery County does some bike rodeos too. So I can definitely share out more information about that. Any last questions before we hop off for today? All right, well, thank you all so much for joining us. I've really enjoyed doing this webinar series with you all, learning a bit more about what's happening in Houston. I look forward to continuing to follow your progress as safe routes to school activities develop in your area. I will send out a follow-up email with a recording of this webinar and the presentation slides, my contact information. If you have any other additional questions or ideas, I'm always available. So please feel free to reach out at any time. And hopefully I will chat with you all soon. Thanks so much for joining. Have a good one.